Alright, ladies, gentlemen, and creatures of YouTube, it's Brian, aka the Blue Falcon, doing a video where I want to try to explain to you the concept of headroom, what the hell it actually is, what it does when you run out of it, and actually, do a demonstration so you can hear it for yourself, because I can talk about it all day long, but it isn't going to make any sense unless you actually hear what headroom is, why people talk about it, why they want a lot of headroom if they use a lot of pedals, why maybe people don't want a lot of headroom, they want a low headroom amp. There's advantages to both. So by the magic of, editing, I'm going to appear over there. Oh, hey, look, I'm over here now. So basically, let's start with what is headroom. Headroom, in the most simple explanation I can think of, is how much room your amp has to get louder before it starts to distort. So here's the tricky thing. Distortion, compression, and headroom are all very much related. In order to keep this video under like an hour long, I'm just going to try and explain what the hell headroom is. And maybe I'll do another video some other time on, how compression and all that relates to it. So here's the thing. Imagine that you're at the gym and you see those like huge hulking roid monkey type guys lifting crazy heavy weights, and they sound like they're either about to go Super Saiyan or drop the world's largest dump. You know the ones that just screaming. That's what your amp does when it runs out of headroom. So let's imagine that same huge bodybuilder type guy. I'm sure he can lift a 10-pound weight, no problem. Just not even making a sound. It's when he really starts to exert himself that he starts grunting and sweating and swearing, probably, I don't know. Your amp does the same thing. So when you have a clean sound, so I've got my Soldano SLO over here, just on I didn't spend any time dialing it in, it's just a clean sound. Right? So that's pretty clean, pretty chimey, no distortion whatsoever. There's no breakup in there. My guitar isn't in tune, let's fix that real quick. Oh, hey, look, I'm in tune. That's note to self. Guitars generally sound better when they're in tune. So here's the G chord. It's clean, sparkly, no distortion whatsoever. And what's going to happen, I'm going to demonstrate this to you. This is a 100-watt amp, so thank God I'm running this into my Universal Audio aux box, because I've got it silently just recording straight into my DAW. This would be freakishly loud. You know the stories of Jimi Hendrix and his wall of Marshalls, and he's got them cranked way the hell up, and people, their hair is like just slicked back from the sound. Back in the day, amps distortion wasn't really a big thing. So amps were intentionally as clean as possible so that you could have your jazz players, all that, pretty stuff, and they could keep up with the PAs and, all the other instruments at the time, the drums and all that, and stay clean. Now, the inverse of that is really low wattage amplifiers, your 1 watts, your 5-watt amps, and like a little junior. You turn that thing way up, it just distorts. So that is the example of what happens when it runs out of headroom. When that bodybuilder guy is straining and going Super Saiyan, whatever the hell he's doing. That's gonna happen. So I'm gonna demonstrate that by turning up the master volume. I'm not gonna change any of the settings on the amp. I'm just simply gonna turn up the volume, and you're gonna hear that it's gonna start to distort because it's got no room left. It's starting to grunt. It's not just gonna it'll get louder, but there's gonna be a point where it stops getting louder and it just starts distorting. So here's the G chord. And now I've turned it up quite loud. Maybe I'll edit this after so that it comes out as the same volume and doesn't blow your eardrums out when you're listening to this. So here's that same G chord. And my guitar's not in tune again. What is going on with this today? I don't know. All right, let's try that again. So I've turned up the volume now. In fact, I'll turn it back down. We'll start from the beginning here. So There you go. You got a nice clean sound. Yeah, it's usable. It works. So as I turn up the volume, that's going to start distorting instead of getting louder because it's maxed out. It can't go any harder, so it's grunting, you know, like the bodybuilder guy. It's just, that's all it's got. It's, man, you know, how do I get more out of this? So right now the master volume is on, master volume's at about 7. Again, that would be absolutely deafening if I didn't have this plugged into an aux box. I'm going to turn that up to about 9. You're going to hear that, you know, there's no headroom left. It's going to start breaking up for sure. So there you go. And it'll start distorting even more if I max the volume. Now you'll notice it cleans up if I'm not really hitting the guitar hard. So I'm gonna try and explain this pretty basically, so you know, don't hate me for missing things, because I know I'm going to. I just want to make it easy to understand. All sound is physical. So in the terms of guitar, the string vibrating, that's the physical movement, and that's being translated into the guitar amp. So what's happening is your pickups create a magnetic field, a string moves through the magnetic field, it translates that into an electrical pulse, basically, and obviously the harder you hit the string, the bigger that electric pulse is going to be hitting the amp. So when you're just generating a little pulse, you're playing quietly. There's not, it's not a huge, you know, it's like using that 10-pound dumbbell. You're not sending a huge bolt of lightning through your amp yet. Once you hit it really hard, you're creating a bigger electrical pulse, and that's where your amp starts giving out. There you go. So that's what headroom is. Now, for people who like to get all of their distortion from pedals and get their entire sound out of pedals, I'm not really that guy, but a lot of people are. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way to achieve a sound. They want the amp to stay clean so that the pedals are controlling everything. On the flip side, you have guys who crank, like a really popular one is the Vox AC30. You crank the hell out of that and you get that really awesome breakout up sound that you hear on, you know, old Bryan Adams records and all that kind of stuff. There you go. That's basically what headroom is. The other thing you can do too is by using a high headroom power amp with a really crazy preamp like the Soldano. This is what the Soldano is made for. It has probably one of the most insane preamp gains of all time, and the power amp is made to not distort. What happens is bass signals take a lot more energy than treble signals. So what happens is when you're doing a lot of, like, you know, the low E string chugging, if you have your power amp not able to handle that kind of signal, that kind of energy, it's going to start flubbing out and crapping out, and it's just going to get mushy and saggy, and especially noticeable, like if you try to play heavy metal on like a cranked, you know, Blues Junior, let's say, it's going to sound, I don't know about terrible, sound is subjective, but it's probably not going to be a sound you associate with like high gain music. So, you know, that's why high headroom, like 100-watt amps are super popular in terms of extreme high gain, heavy metal, down-tuned stuff, because they're getting all that saturation, all of that distortion out of the preamp instead of out of the power amp. It's the same thing. You're running out of headroom in the preamp section, but the power amp section translates that into just more volume. So it's just a different way of achieving the sound. And headroom is everywhere. Headroom is in pedals. You can have a pedal where it's, you know, 9 volts versus 18 volts. 18 volts is going to give you more headroom because there's more power there. It's got more before it gets maxed out, you know. It can lift more weight if we go back to that bodybuilder example or whatever. So it's everywhere. Microphones, recording interfaces. You know, if you turn up the volume too loud, your microphone signal, your voice is going to distort. It's like, you know, if you're on the phone with somebody and they scream into the phone, it starts distorting. That's the same thing. It's run out of headroom. So distortion is basically the opposite of headroom. Once you run out of headroom, it distorts rather than staying clean. You're basically overloading the circuit. You're giving it more than it can handle, more weight that it can handle. It's going Super Saiyan on you. It's taking that huge crap. You know, so that's what that is. So I hope you found this informative. I hope you found it useful. I guess it's a bit of a dry subject, but, you know, it's useful to know, and hopefully it'll help you when you're searching for your next amp or pedal or whatever. You know, it's just good information to have handy. Cheers.